The cry of 5 mothers who have connected themselves and their families with vaccinations is of damage, ruin, and the loss of children, the loss of function of the human beings born to them or born to their mothers. This is David Tulis with AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. And today we are going to explore a terrifying topic, one to which I am unequal, but which we will have the help in discussing. And that will be from 5 women in the Chattanooga area who are strongly opinionated as to whether or not public health and mass health helps the individual patient, the individual target, if you will, of the hypodermic needles administered by doctors, nursing staff, and CNAs in pediatric clinics around Chattanooga and Hamilton County, and maybe around clinics where you might live. If you were watching us from a far place and checking out my bow tie on YouTube, the Hot News Talk Radio channel, or live on Facebook, I do ask you to join us today. Give a little bit of time to this question. If you are as ignorant about the vaccination threat as I am, well, maybe today will, at the very least, inspire you and encourage you to take steps to learn more and to encourage others to look into this question. There's a lot of general literature about it, and there's a great deal of scientific literature, but also because we have government cartels in the medical field, and we have huge streams of money going toward universities and drug companies and their tests, and we have the FDA, which does not have to approve vaccinations. We have a complex system that's difficult to avoid, and one that is, I would say, almost certainly injurious to you and to your family, especially if you buy the whole protocol of vaccinations for your children, which have risen from maybe half a dozen when you, my listener, were a boy to 16, 20, maybe even 30 today, all called standard, some of which are combined, such as the MMR, mumps, measles, and rubella vaccine, to lethal effect and also to autistic effect. And I am David Tulis, and our show here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio is the David Tulis Show. I do thank you for giving me just a couple of minutes of your time. At Panera Posse this morning, I saw just at another table, Reverend Marty Lasley and his son were sitting there. And often, it's almost kind of as a joke among Christians, I said, Pastor Lasley, have the scientists and philosophers found the molecule yet? The molecule which is independent of God's government, independent of God's sovereignty. And he thinks for a moment, he says, no, I haven't read in the scientific literature anything about that. I think they're still looking. They're still looking for the molecule that operates independently of God's sovereignty. Now, you, my listener, okay, you're not a Christian, not a believer, don't have much interest in the church. You may have been to church as a boy, sat through many Sunday school lessons, and heard pat answers about life's problems from your minister. But there is a question of if God is not sovereign, then who is? Well, the answer is, of course, men are sovereign, and man in general is sovereign. And if there's not if there exists a single molecule somewhere in the world that does what it wants, then God cannot be God, and he must always respond and react to contingencies, right? He has to account for a will apart from his own, something he cannot control. And therefore, if that's the case, he cannot ordain that someone like you, for example, might receive the grace of the Holy Spirit and repent of your sins and become a faithful and true son of God. As Adam was, Moses was, David, and many other sinners who were true sons of God, St. Paul, and John and Matthew, all those notable characters in the Bible. He couldn't do that. He couldn't do that because that one Adam overthrew his government. And I bring this up because I've been put to thought pretty deeply in the past 3 or 4 days on the question of whether God is sovereign or not, and how is it that Christians today, people who profess Jesus to be their Lord, right, deny effectively that he has a plan for mankind, he has any kind of message for mankind, a message which I would like to suggest affects the Tennessee Code annotated, that affects the Hamilton County Criminal Court, that affects the deliberations even in Chancery, that great, wonderful, marvelous jurisdiction of Chancery Court, affects the dispositions of justice and the mediation of disputes in that domain here in Hamilton County. Well, yes, God does govern the universe, and it's by his law, and it's by revelation. And it comes from an interview I had this week with a man named Anthony Stanton. Anthony is a devout Christian. He's a kind of a wiry man, 60, lives in Chattanooga, and he goes about passing out copies of the Ten Commandments, very nicely laminated copies of the Ten Commandments, the King James Version, he assures me. And so I have a copy of that here in the office, of course, at the Hot News Talk Radio. And the question we had, one of the two questions we discussed in our chat, was why the commandments are important. And he says that they're important because if people live by the Ten Commandments, starting with "Thou shalt have no other gods before me," to the last one, number 10, which is the ball and bat commandment, 1-0. Be content with your own ball and bat. In other words, don't covet. That's "Thou shalt not covet" is the last of the commandments. If you have people living in terms of them, well, you'll have less need for law enforcement, right? You'd have less need for courts, less need for human legislation, because why? Well, because people would be living godly toward each other, which means that they would be living in equitable harmony, in amity. In other words, in the free market, right? They would be living in the free market, which is the fruit of Christianity. Capitalism is based on Christianity. It's based on the Bible, and it's taken mankind. It took them 1,500 years since the resurrection for man to find and really work out the implications of the market. Starting with the Spanish bankers the Italian bankers who worked in Spain, and by one account, they were the first ones. But Franz Weber, in his book on capitalism from the 1920s, really pointed out that the Reformation in the 1600s created the impulse for genius, for capitalism, for innovation, and for science. All these things were hugely advanced by effectively a rediscovery of the Bible, the Word of God, and which had been smothered over by the Roman Catholic Church, the so-called Universal Church, with its headquarters, with its bishoprics pointing all to Rome, and the Word of God was rediscovered, the law of God was rediscovered, and of course grace, the great impulse of grace, uncovered, rediscovered by Luther the monk, the Augustinian monk. Who found that man is saved by God's grace through faith alone. Right, the word "alone" is essential, and with good works following. And the Roman system says you were saved by faith through grace and works. And so the distinction was that the Reformation rediscovered your Protestant heritage, right? Rediscovered that it's by grace, God's grace. God is sovereign. He dispenses grace as he will, to whom he will, not to everybody, but to whom he will. It's up to him. And that person is saved by grace through faith alone. That is the great discovery. And from that principle came to be unleashed the genius of science, all of which had tremendous leaps and bounds, and capitalism in the 1500s and later. And we are the heirs of that great heritage, but we have forgotten it. We have forgotten it. And as I thought about what my friend was saying, I have a question for you, and we're going to be talking about vaccinations today, but I have to get this point kind of off my chest for you. Here it is, Friday. We're here at the Love Your Neighbor Buy Local radio station, the local economy and free markets radio station. We believe that Fridays are kind of an off-speed day. And yes, I'm here in my studio with my bow tie on, and I'm glad that you are giving me a couple of minutes of your time. You, my listener, I'm grateful for you. You give me just a couple of minutes of of your time, and you are hopefully better off for it. And we're live on YouTube. We're live on Facebook. We think that near is better than far, that small is better than big, simple than complex. That's an amazing proposition. That's also part of the fruits of Christianity. And personal is better than corporate, physical than abstract. Our show is brought to you by the website, a very unpopular website. And that website is Nooganomics.com. That's Nooganomics.com. And I say, here's why it's not popular. It's because it's only for the man who matters, right? If people don't matter, they don't go there, right? And that's quite all right with me. So I realize that I'm talking to you, my listener, and maybe there's somebody else out there who's listening too. But just by the way, since you know there might be another person listening to my show here in our station, what you need to do is think, do I want that person to walk into my business, right? You're a businessman. Well, if you are a businessman and you have a business and provide a service, then you need to contact our sales manager, Steve Johnson. Steve is at 240-5459, 240-5459. We bring results. We've got the best advertisements in town. Some of them are just hilarious, and they're not just nice sounding. They bring results, right? We sell results here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. Tennessee Baptist Children's Home, just by the way, is having a golf tournament November the 1st. Time is running out to take part in that. You, my listener, if you play golf, do enjoy the Windstone Golf Course in Ottawa on that day. It's the Coach Carey Henley Memorial Golf for Kids Classic benefit for the Children's Home at 6623 Lee Highway. Now, this is Christian Baptist in particular, and it doesn't take money from the good people in Washington. So it's a 501c3, and you need to take part in it. Write a nice check. Okay, you, my listener, write the big check. Okay, help out this godly effort of children without parents at home. The number to call to make some arrangements for your check or to take part in the golfing tournament is 892-2722. Write it down. Come on. Okay, 892-2722. And this is David Tulis. Here's the problem with Christianity. Christianity has fallen into many traps, and I'd say some sins, in its unwillingness to admit the sovereignty and providence of God. Think, for example, in the book of Deuteronomy. Let me open up my online version of it. The book of Deuteronomy, 15th chapter, which is dismissed by Anthony Stanton and other people who are devout Christians, and yet they discount and slight the details of God's law. And here we have a fine Christian, a former criminal, right? A repentant former prison inmate who has committed all the sins that man can commit, and also all the crimes. He's committed many of the crimes he admitted that people deserve to be punished for by the court. And here now he's meek and silent and quiet and gracious Christian man. But I think he has to think some more about this question. And I would just encourage you to think also with him on the question of the reach of God's commandments. It's not just the commandments that are relevant today; it's the underlying law, and that's where Christians have a problem. The law can only go so far, right? We don't worry about Deuteronomy and Leviticus because that's Old Testament. That's the law of Moses. And we say, well, the law of Moses was given to the children of Israel, and those children are gone. They are gone. They've been divorced. God divorced them, right? He judged them to death with the Roman sacking of Jerusalem in AD 90 or AD 70. But what we have is we are kind of contentless. We have the Ten Commandments, which, yes, of course, would be less busy. Law enforcement would be less busy if we obey the Ten Commandments. But how do you obey the Ten Commandments? That's the question I have. How do you obey them? Did Christ come to destroy the law? Did he come to abrogate the law? No. As he says in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5, that he came to fulfill. That means he came to obey the law. Every law that touched him, all the commandments touch you all the time, right? They're always relevant to you, whether from idolatry, adultery, theft, bearing false witness, coveting, murdering. These are all commandments that Jesus obeyed. The Christian man, you're not a Christian, but you know Christians, people, right? He would say, yes, Jesus obeyed all the commandments. Well, does that mean that he destroyed and abrogated the commandments? No. In fact, he brought them to life. In fact, with that Sermon on the Mount, he says the commandments are not just about outward actions, but in the inward life, right? You have heard that it was said, do this and do that. And he's referring in those references in that sermon to the outward act. Well, coveting is not just committing adultery in the act. It's committing adultery by lusting after that woman in your office, right? That's forbidden. So God reaches into the heart, unlike Allah, who does not. The Muslims have it easy. They don't have a God who pries into their secret thoughts and their routine covetings, their routine lustings. They don't have to worry about that prying God. Their God works on the surface of things. But the God of Christianity, about which you know something, my listener, he works on the inner man by grace and conviction, right? The law is compelling and compulsory. It's no, 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 on the backside of which are always yes, yes, yes. If you shall not steal, right, in the 8th commandment, if you, my listener, cannot steal by God's prohibition, well, that implies many other things. And among them, that you have to look out for the prosperity of your neighbor, his good name, right? And all the things that connect with having a positive view of other people and looking out and defending their interest in property, which is what is protected in that commandment. The right of property adheres in the commandment, forbidding theft. And I ask about Deuteronomy 15 because it has some naughty laws in it. And there are several laws in that, and that I just picked that out because I had read Deuteronomy 15 that morning of my interview with Mr. Stanton. There is debt relief for the poor. The whole thing that the poor people in the Old Testament times in Israel were bound to forgive debts, forgive the debts that were contracted no longer than 7 years. If you had a neighbor who was poor, you are compelled to cheerfully lend to him the money with an open hand. And God looks at the heart. Your hand has to be open to that person. It has to be open. The hand has to be open in Deuteronomy 15 and 7 and following. And what about if you have an indentured servant? Well, indentured servitude is part of the free market, right? We have that today. Many, many colonies came to the New World as indentured servants or slaves bound to 7-year terms. The owner would give passage, and then the newcomer would work for him in his shop or in his field for 7 years. The law of God requires that the master, on the departure of the servant or slave, give liberally from his stock. In other words, the slave leaves with tools of the trade that he's learned in the master's house. The master sets up, in fact, a competitor. And what about that chapter goes on. And here, think now, this is all Old Testament stuff, right? Does this apply? Do the ideas here apply? Does the character of God implied in these commandments apply today? That's the question. And many Christians say no. And as Mr. Stanton, they care nothing about the Old Testament. They don't even read it. It's all just old law stuff, right? We're not saved by law, we're saved by grace. And then the chapter has also, if the servant loves you and you love him, then he can be bound to you for life. And the slave, that servant whom you have indentured, you have a maximum of 7 years of his life to repay his debt or his obligation to you. He loves you and you love him. So you can, together in a public ceremony, in a public declaration, like today, you'd file it with the county court clerk, with Bill Knowles. You put the awl in his ear, make a hole in his ear, and everybody knows that servant there belongs to David Tulis. And that servant there is bound to David Tulis for life because he loves him and he loves him. And each prospers in the custody and friendship of the other. So you see, slavery is personal. And so slavery in God's law, while it is not ideal, it does bring about human benefit. Slavery today, we have many forms of it. And it's impersonal. It is to bureaucracies. It is to systems. And it is to courts, probation officers, sessions courts, criminal courts, and the like. We have slavery today. We have debt slavery. In fact, Tennessee has debt slavery. People who can't pay their court fines are enslaved. They are put into jail, and they're prevented from being productive. They lose their jobs. Children at home are waiting for dad to come with his dreadlocks, and he can't come. He's in the jail. He's downtown. He can't get out. And there are many other. For example, if you go further on in chapter 19 of Deuteronomy, there's the manslaughter versus murder distinction, and the cities of refuge. The axe head flies off the handle and kills the man in the forest. How do you know whether that was intentional or not. How does the man who killed his companion escape the wrath of the family? And what about landmarks? What about the false witness law? The false witness law says if you testify falsely, you shall be punished with the punishment meted to the one that would have been meted to the one against whom you lied. Right? You have to pay the price of your lie on the punishment that other person would have received. But you were found out, and now that punishment comes upon you. You see, that's equitable. These are questions because there are many people, I'd say Seventh-day Adventists, Baptists, Church of God, Church of Christ, many Christian denominations reject this discussion. But in this discussion, in these rules, in the case law, if you will, in Christianity, you have an explanation of God's perfect character. God is totally just, as people go to church and hear. He's totally just, and so God wants there to be equitable treatment. For every wrong, there's a remedy. For every grievance, there's a way of making things right, and that's the whole lex talionis system. It's called lex talionis. Did you ever hear that in church? Well, maybe not. If you go for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. That's the last verse in chapter 19. Well, I'd say that's relevant. I'd say that's important. But we have today a contentless and privatized Christianity. Christianity has no content. You have the commandments, but they're not sitting on anything. Just somehow by grace, well, you've got this, it's kind of magic, a kind of Christian magic. Well, you're a Christian now. God writes his law in your hearts. And so you know exactly what to do. Does society know what to do? Do judges know what to do? How are court systems arranged? How do you have justice? How do you have laws? How do you have customs? What about jails? What about prisons? What about police? Are police godly, or should everybody be the police? Should every man be armed because every man upholds the law? I would say that the professionalization of policing is a grievous departure from the biblical model. It's also a grievous departure from the constitutional model, where cops are unconstitutional. Cops rose from the progressive era in the 1880s, 1890s. They are a relative novelty, and they are part of the war of the state against the people. Sola Scriptura came out of the Reformation, the Scripture alone. But how about this one? How about tota Scriptura, which means the totality of Scripture? Here, Christians, they believe in the New Testament. What about the rest of it? Does God not breathe in the Old Testament? Is all relevant, useful, and worth studying, or just the New Testament? I think that the Ten Commandments are perpetual, but I would suggest to the Christian person, you my listener, not the churchgoer, but Christians who reject the Old Testament. They in fact are antinomian. They are against law. Well, listen, let me ask you this: you care about personal liberty, constitutional liberty. If Christians reject God's law, why are you upset when courts reject Constitution? Why are you upset when the Congress disobeys its law, which is the Constitution, or the statute, or your officer, your tax collector, rejects the statute that binds him and gives him authority, and he acts outside of his authority? Why are you upset about that? Why are Christian people upset when their officers, their judges, their representatives reject the Constitution and, of course, reject God's law? They reject God's law. Go to Nooganomics.com and read about Todd Gardenhire. Nooganomics.com. Todd Gardenhire, because he is a conventional Republican, overlooks several grievous sins that are matters of public policy. They're matters of corrective legislation. But does he care, Todd Gardenhire? No. Next, vaccines.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240. Here's what advertisers are saying about AM 1240. HotNewsTalkRadio.com.
Radio station, they really care. They're always calling me probably once a week, checking on me, seeing how things are going, see if they want to change any of the ads or do anything different, seeing what my needs are. Gotten business off the ads that you do for me, and seems to be working well at this point.
Prices were very fair. Areas in this town that we aren't able to get other ways, your radio station is able to help us out, and I really appreciate that.
We've been very pleased with the services we've got. It seems like everybody over there cares about about what they're going to do, how it's going to work for us on this end. And we've been very impressed with the creativity of the ads that we've heard, and they always seem to be right on point, even without us having to come up with what's going to be said.
Been doing business with News Talk Radio for quite some time. It's the best place and the best value you can get for your advertisement. The commercials are great. They're very professional. I was actually blown away.
The commercial that they put together was awesome. It was way far above all the other radio stations we've dealt with. The best we've had yet, guarantee you, by far.
AM 1240 HotNewsTalkRadio.com gets results. Let us get results for your business. For no obligation free consultation, call General Sales Manager Steve Johnson. Call 423-240-5459. That's 240-5459. Or you can always email Steve at NougaRadioSteve@gmail.com. That's NougaRadioSteve@gmail.com. AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. We get results.
The NASCAR racer's ideal is quality and excellence. So is mine. Hi, David Tulis here. My pit crew is S&S Auto Repair. I've taken Toyotas and Hondas to S&S for 13 years, even though it's way out of my way. I like being treated fairly, like a neighbor. S&S specializes in Toyota and Lexus, Honda, Acura, Scion, Nissan, and Infiniti. Make an appointment today and get a free 4-inch combat knife as a gift. 855-3436. SSAutorepair.net. 855-3436.
You used to call me on my cell phone.
When you crack your screen, mess up your charge port, you get soaked in a rainstorm, what do? Save money, save big. Fix it. Get surgery. There's a cell phone hospital near you. It's the Cell Surgeon. Adam Disbro, the man in white, he replaces your screen, fixes your buttons, gives you back Twitter, Facebook, your online universe. Walk-in patients go to Cell Surgeon in Ottawa. Cell Surgeon is new in Ottawa, next to Zaxby's. Other docs in the cell repair business are just lab coats. The doc at Cell Surgeon is the best. He wants you to be happy, fix your phone, save money, and save time. Every minute is valuable, and Cell Surgeon doesn't want to waste a second. Your wireless MD, the Cell Surgeon, quick and precise with your device. Takes an hour or less. Northgate Mall, Cell Surgeon next to Old Chicago Pizza, 900-8263, thecellsurgeon.com. Like him on Facebook.
You used to call me on my... You used to.
I'm blowing everything up. We're starting over. I'm doing a new show. I want guys who push it to the middle of the table and go over the top. Take a risk, fail miserably. I'm right, and I'm not wrong, and I'll never back down. Conflict works. Allow it.
It's The Herd with Colin Cowherd. Right here and everywhere. Noon Eastern.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Hot 1240 Hot News Talk Radio with your Hot News Now update. A home invasion is something that most gun owners train for but never expect to actually happen to them. But when Charles Sledge from Sunrise Drive heard a noise inside of his house, he pulled a gun and went in. Ryan Megan Francis was sitting at his kitchen table, according to his testimony. Mr. Sledge held a gun on her until police arrived. The woman said that she thought the house was abandoned, and she said she had been chased into it by another woman. She's now in jail, charged with aggravated burglary. Trouble at the Cancun's on Market Street when a man apparently a gas pump but began beating it with a tire iron. He beat several others as well, according to the manager of that store. He then picked up a gas canister, poured gasoline in front of a dumpster, lit it on fire, and sped away in his Jeep. He's been arrested and charged with setting fire to personal property and vandalism. 35-year-old Thomas Williams was sitting in his parked car when he was shot in the face by an unknown assailant. He apparently drove himself to a nearby fire station where he was then taken to a hospital by EMS. Police are still trying to find 2 suspects on the loose. It was going on in the Tennessee Valley. It's going on Hot 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
Expect some passing clouds, but still dry and warm out there. High temperatures of around 80 tonight. A few more clouds, overnight lows much milder, 60 to 62. Check out JCPenney and get an extra 20% off select items with your JCPenney credit card and coupon, or 15% with any other form of payment. That's getting your pennies worth at JCPenney. And I'm Swargene 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Orr on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
This is David Tulis with AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. We are going to hear now from moms from the Chattanooga area who are concerned about the rise of autism and the prospect of ruin, not just in their families, but in perhaps your family, of taking vaccines, which are damaging the nervous systems of children. This is David Tulis with AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, and I have on the mic here Danielle Seymour Phillips. She has two children. She 4 years old and 17 months. She lives in Saudi Daisy. Her husband Samuel is a CPA, and she had a sister in 1983 who died, Rachel, at 2 months old. Her mother suspects from DPT shot, and it was said that the cause of this child's death is SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, which is a kind of mystery label for an ailment which may have a real cause. Danielle Seymour Phillips, tell my listener what happened in your family. Why are you here? What are you concerned about?
Right. My sister, Rachel, was born in 1984. She received at the time it was the DTP, which is diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis. And she passed away after receiving the vaccine. And she was perfectly healthy. She had been to the pediatrician the day before, and they bragged about how healthy she was. And then my mom took her home and fed her and noticed that she wasn't feeding very well. She wasn't latching well. She seemed almost, she seemed out of it. She was very different from that moment. And then she was found in the crib dead. And so my family is very passionate about this topic, and we have been highly influenced by what has happened in our family. You know, almost every day, I drive by the cemetery where my sister was buried and promise that I will always advocate for her. I have two daughters who we have not vaccinated after doing much research on that. And so we are here to talk about that today. And we are concerned that parents are not researching this as well as they should. They're researching maybe car seats more than they are vaccines, something that's being injected into their child. So that is my story.
This is David Tulis. We're at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, and I'd like to talk next with Melanie McDowell. She is a resident of Ringgold, and she has 4 children. Her husband is a constitutional-minded police officer, which we're very glad to hear about. I know that you, my listener, if you're a police officer, you are among those. You are concerned about the Constitution and seeking to use your authority only where it's allowed by probable cause and lawful authority. Melanie McDowell is is very concerned about the right to choose. And Melanie, are parents being told that they can't choose about vaccinations here in Tennessee? We don't live in California where there's the loss of liberty on that point. What else? Tell us more about this problem.
Well, I'm a Georgia resident, but Tennessee and Georgia, right now you do have the right to decline vaccinations, to delay vaccinations, and most people are using the religious exemption to do that.
This is David Tulis, and caller, you're on the air. What's on your mind?
Hi, David. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead. You're on the air, sir. What's on your mind?
I have a question for your guest.
Go ahead.
If you can hear me, I can't hear you. Pneumococcal virus, or so-called virus. I've had young teenage girls, and 2 separate doctors have wanted them to get immunized. And I researched it and found out the doctor that actually developed it is now coming out against it. And I think they're using this as a form of birth control on some girls. And when the doctor was asked, where's your research to show it's safe, he couldn't produce it. This is a multi-billion-dollar scam. And I wanted you to touch on that. Thank you.
All right, thanks. All right, go ahead, Melanie McDonald.
Well, right now you can take the religious exemption, but it's increasingly harder to do that. A few months ago, the American Academy of Pediatrics basically came out with a statement telling their member pediatricians that you're free to dismiss any of your patients who do not go along with the CDC recommended schedule. And so I hear people all the time, constantly on Facebook, I've been dismissed by my pediatrician. Where do I go now? Who's seeing a vaccine-friendly pediatrician? So it concerns me that, I mean, if a parent wants to delay or to not vaccinate their child, you should be able to do that. And currently in Georgia and Tennessee, that's possible. But as they say, what happens in California spreads across the nation. And I think that we're looking within the next couple of years, there's already legislation in Congress to make vaccines mandatory. And I think that's what we're looking at. And that concerns me.
Well, how can it be mandatory if it's without consent? How can there be any kind of medical treatment without consent, which is a principal point? Would you not say, Melanie McDonald?
Yes, I think we should have the right to choose what we inject into our own bodies and our children. But, laws are passed that can be enforced.
Well, it sounds like in that case, you, my listener, if we are in a state where a law like that is passed, compulsory vaccination, that you have to be at that point the belligerent claimant in person. You just simply have to say no and take the consequences. That might mean arrest. That might mean being put in jail, being booked, and so on some specious charge. But the only way an evil law like that is defeated is by a defendant who says no and who says, I'm not putting my children through that. And I do not give consent. We do not give consent. And you lack constitutional authority to act against me. Next, I'd like to talk with Rhonda Osman, who lives also in Ringgold. Rhonda has 3 children, ages 16, 17, and 19. Her husband is a health safety official at Bosch, and Rhonda teaches at Virginia College and is also a mental health counselor. She was, in her earlier wonderful life, a top Mary Kay sales director. We have another call. Let me see. This is David Tulis, and caller, you're on the air. What's on your mind?
Great show. I have a question for your guest, but I want to make a statement. There's no such thing as mandatory when it comes to Americans. There's no law that can require anyone to do anything, period. That's settled law. So just remember that. But if they say it's mandatory, no one can compel anyone to do anything. Now, they do it covertly and subvertly, but the one word you need to use is no. By what authority? The law is unconstitutional, and you stand your ground.
Stand your ground. Okay. Tell us, Rhonda, what your story is.
Like he said, I have 3 children. My youngest daughter is now 16. Her back then, 16 years ago, there wasn't any talk about vaccines. There wasn't any question as to, you just did it. I was a mom, my other 2 children. But what I began to realize is at the age of 6 months, we were getting vaccines right and left. At the age of 6 months, my daughter got the series of DTaps. She got quite a few vaccines at the same time. And right after she got it, her head stopped growing. And that's a very dangerous thing at that age because that's when your head is growing the most. And as a result, because we had no idea, the pediatrician wasn't going to say anything. He didn't, he believes the CDC. And so we were going to every kind of specialist. They were going to do surgery on my little baby and open her skull up because everything had stopped growing. Her head had stopped growing. And as a result, she now has a disability and she's on that autism spectrum. She has auditory processing disorder. She's had speech and language delay, poor growth. She was labeled repeatedly failure to thrive up to the point of that vaccine. She was a perfectly normal child. She was very healthy weight. I nursed her for an entire year. And then the problem was we didn't know. Nobody knew what was going on. And so we went to every kind of specialist. She's been poked, prodded, everything you can imagine. Nephrologist, endocrinologist, every kind of, they were telling me, feed her this, feed her that, all these fattening foods, and nothing was working. And then we continued because nobody said anything. We didn't know. You trusted the doctors. You trusted CDC. You trusted what was being told to you. So we continued to vaccinate her. Well, I began to realize as a few years back that we went back through the records and we pinpointed exactly when this happened. And I began to investigate. I went back, and when she was 9 years old, they had a report that they had done on her. She was also labeled as mentally retarded. And we went and we looked back, and it said that she had high levels of mercury in her blood. Now, let me share with you that DTaP, among the other vaccines that she got, has aluminum phosphate. It has thimerosal, which is mercury. It has bovine, which is cow extract, formaldehyde, and then something phenazothanol, which is a solvent for dyes. It's also used as an insect repellent. These vaccines, the one that my daughter got that stopped everything, had that in it. It also had something called polysorbate 80, which is actually used in detergents. Why are they putting that into our children? In the 1930s, nobody had ever heard of autism. It was not around. And now, 1 in every 100, they're saying by the turn of the century, which in the next 5 years, it will become 1 in every 45 child. So ask yourself, if I could tell you something, if I could make a change for you, I would tell you knowledge is power. I've heard that before. The difference is real knowledge. Don't go to CDC. You need to investigate what is being put, what is in these vaccines, because you will have no excuse if that happens to you. Truth Kings, Green Med Info, Dr. Tenpenny, these are different sites, different people you can go to.
We'll get those names in just a minute. This is David Tulis. We're talking with Rhonda Osman, who is from Ringgold. She's a very accomplished woman, and she is telling us about her child injured from a DTP vaccine. I've got a caller. Caller, is this Mike?
David, listen, I have a real important question.
Okay, let me have it, Mike.
But before that, let me tell you what to do. You make sure the doctor signs a document saying they guarantees that this vaccine is safe, and it will do no harm to your child. He will never sign it. If he doesn't sign it, you have a legal reason to object to it and bring that to school. So that's no excuse that my kid can't go to school without being vaccinated.
All right. So what is the sentence? What does the sentence say on this statement? What is one sentence? What does it say?
Be, I do. You would say professionally and personally recognize, make it in clear English language, that the vaccines about to be administered, and name them, are harmless, will do no harm, and will have no side effects for the patient. Name the patient. They will never sign that. Well, why won't you sign it? Okay, come on, what's the problem here? You say it's not going to do any harm. Well, they may have a temperature. Okay, well, let's put in there they'll just have a low temperature. Oh, we can't do that. Okay, then you know what? This is a cost administration. That's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with $1 billion business. Now, here's my question. So that if they don't sign that, you write on that piece of paper. I'm talking to the audience here. You write on that piece of paper, refuse to sign, and the date, because that's evidence right there. Right now, they're trying to push these vaccines on teenagers. I have teenage girls to prevent ovarian cancer. The woman that created the vaccine says they are dangerous, and it doesn't work, and it prevents pregnancy.
You mean cervical cancer? That's the
cervical cancer. They're trying to, and really, what it is nothing more than a way to prevent them from getting pregnant. Doctors are pushing this, and when both doctors, for my both little girls, two separate doctors, I asked them, where's their evidence to show that this is not only safe but effective? They couldn't answer it. And I said, here's an article by the woman who created the vaccine saying it's not only not effective, but it's dangerous and can cause cancer.
This is David Tulis. We're talking with, thanks, Mike, for the call. We're talking with Rhonda Osman. Rhonda, what is the question that my listener needs to ask? We heard from the caller a legal question. But in the larger context, what should he be asking, or what should he be asking his wife? Our listeners, we're the Guy station, sports station, Sean Hannity, Colin Cowherd, NASCAR. We're CBS and Fox affiliate here. We're all about God, with how guys should think. So the dad who's listening to our show, he's kind of at a distance from this whole topic. What does he need to ask, talk about with his wife? What's the question he needs to throw at her in the conversation as a couple about their children?
Okay, that's a great question. And I can tell you that looking back now, if I can share with you what we did wrong, My husband has a medical background, and he was wondering, he began to look at things, but we did not talk about it. My daughter's whole first year of life was such a blur to me. It was a blur because I don't even know what was going on with my other kids because I was so focused on going to every kind of specialist. So make sure that you're talking to each other. Be very, very honest and open and do the research together. If he's busy, then the wife, she gets on the internet. I'll give you two sites that have really opened my eyes. TruthKings.com and Green Med Info. Both of those, they're not CDC. They have nothing to gain, and they will share with you what's in these vaccines. You can go and do the investigating. And then, like I said, real, correct knowledge is power. So investigate together and make decisions together.
This is David Tulis, and we are here talking with 5 moms about vaccinations. And when we're going to talk next with Amy Miller, I'm going to tease you with the content of what she's going to say next. She is talking about exemptions, religious exemptions, and we're going to touch on it just for a moment here because I've got some very important messages I want you to hear of some of our sponsors here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. And my name is David Tulis, and we're here today with you to draw attention to a movie. The movie is called Vaxxed, and some of the sponsors, the producer, one of the stars, will be in town Monday, and so we want you to find out about where they're going to be, what's happening. We don't have the details of the arrival of the Vaxxed tour, but it's kind of an information gathering tour of the movie makers, Dr. Wakefield and others, gathering stories. Again, these are just stories that are they don't prove anything necessarily, but they are personal experiences of disaster, personal and familial disaster from the consumption of these untested products. Now, we say vaccines are not tested. That we'll hear maybe from these moms who know about this what that means and how that's true. But Amy Miller, in a nutshell, you are a mom. You have a 6-year-old girl. You are a kind of an anti-vaxxer. You've not vaccinated this child. You or she was denied access to a preschool because of your this girl's parents' position. In a nutshell, because we have just a minute or so, what does my listener need to know about exemptions and getting around the bureaucratic blockade to services if you are a vaccine-free family?
Well, what I'd like to start with is I'm actually a parent that is for choice. We choose not to. But the vaccine exemptions are available in the state of Tennessee, a religious exemption or a medical exemption. And through my story, once we were denied solely based on the fact that we do not vaccinate, we hired an attorney who specifically does only vaccine rights, legal work. And we found out through him and as well as a state attorney that it is illegal if you have an exemption in the state of Tennessee to deny admission to school solely based on that or for any reason. You can't use that. We have rights. I'm here to use them. I've researched them, and I think it's very important that you go and read what our rights are and for the schools to know that. A lot of people don't know what they don't know. I've learned a ton of information throughout this journey, and I'm here to tell others about it so that I can help them.
We'll talk with Amy Miller of Chattanooga in a few minutes because I have some important messages. Our station is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. We're a terrific station, a multimedia platform, a fiery multimedia platform. And my name is David Tulis. I'm the writer with the biggest pen in the county, and that is our 180-foot tower in a valley in Soddy Daisy, amid the fields there in the hills of Soddy Daisy. We pulsate 1,000 watts, and we're live on YouTube, live right now on Facebook. Come to our Hot News Talk Radio Facebook platform. All of our shows all the time are there on that station, but here now we're feeding a live video to Facebook. Come and look at these moms. We'll have a little bit more time on the other side of our very important commercial break. The name is David Tulis. Our station has Hannity, NASCAR, Colin Cowherd, Coast to Coast AM, and the fiery, very pro-American Alex Jones. And locally, we've got the art beat of Chattanooga with Jill Collins, and in sports, Clutch with Keon Rose. In the evening hours, we're expanding our operation. Russell, our news director, And we're here to serve you. We provide a public service, and this is part of that. The Vax bus is coming Monday, so keep tuned here for details about that. We say here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, love your neighbor and buy local. Near is better than far, and small is better than big, and simple than complex. That position, that free market position, esteems the family, esteems the decisions parents make about their own children, and it does not like the patronizing and, dare I say, tyrannical outlook of our progressive friends who want to force good things on people. Well, vaccines may be a good thing, but maybe not for you.
Over? Did you say over? Nothing is over until we decide it is. Was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor? No!
Sherman, forget it, he's rolling.
And it ain't over now. Because when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Who's with me? Let's go! Come on!
Hot News Talk 1240 AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio with your chance to win $124 in cash and $124 in food every week with the Hot News Talk Radio 1, 2, 3 NASCAR contest. Hot News Talk 1240. All you have to do is guess who's going to be first, second, and third place in the upcoming NASCAR Sprint Cup race. If you guess it, you'll hear your name live Monday morning at 11:30. Then call AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio to win. Enter your guess right now at Rick Davis Golden Diamonds, 5301 Brainerd Road, Chattanooga. Diesel Off-Road Technology Soddy Daisy for your four-wheel drive and truck needs. Stuff and upholstery with premium rubber foam. Amigos Mexican Restaurant next to Staples and Hickson. Drink specials during the race. Cell Surgeon, the Broken Screen Doc. And Shooter's Supply, 4824 Hickson Pike in Hickson. Hot News Talk 1240. Enter your guesses now and listen to the race live to win $124 in cash and $124 in food from Chattanooga's official NASCAR radio station. Hot News Talk 1240.
I love NASCAR.
We're at the Cantina at Amigos Mexican Restaurant. Yes, sir. 2 orders of nachos with beef and beans, 2 beers. Chattanooga loves its Amigos restaurants, but the Amigos in Hickson has something extra. NASCAR, every race. How about a house wine? Really good. Big name beers, just tell Maria what you want. And here at Amigos, margaritas are popular, and it's only $3 all day. If you come here on a race day, Sunday, a Natty Light is only $2.25. Here at Amigos, just during NASCAR, Natty Light, $2.25. Amigos Mexican Restaurant in Hickson. The happy hour is 3 to 9 today and every day. I'd say the atmosphere is festive. Look at that huge TV. It's like being amid the fans under a bright sun, but no gasoline fumes, no heat. Stay cool. Quench your thirst. Amigos between Staples and Hobby Lobby. Take the next table to mine. Enjoy the NASCAR race with friend or family here at the Cantina at Amigos Mexican Restaurant. Okay, it's starting.
Drivers, start your engines.
The NASCAR racer's ideal is quality and excellence. So is mine. Hi, David Tulis here. My pit crew is S&S Auto Repair. I've taken Toyotas and Hondas to S&S for 13 years, even though it's way out of my way. I like being treated fairly, like a neighbor. S&S specializes in Toyota and Lexus, Honda, Acura, Scion, Nissan, and Infiniti. Make an appointment today and get a free 4-inch combat knife as a gift. 855-3436. ssautorepair.net. 855-3436.
Charge! Get back there, you dang Yankee! Great horny toads, I'm up north. Gotta burn my boots, they touched Yankee soil. Lay down your arms and step forward, Yankee!
What's the hassle, Schmassel?
My orders from General Lee is to hold the Macy-Dixie line, and no Yankees are crossing it.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world. You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
WSDT Soddy Daisy, Chattanooga.
CBS News, I'm Frank Sedapani. Republican running mate Mike Pence promises evidence before the day is out to knock down allegations of sexual misconduct by Donald Trump. Pence spoke to Charlie Rose on CBS this morning.
Donald Trump has asserted that all of these recent unsubstantiated allegations are categorically false, and I do believe it.
You believe him?
I do believe
that they're not true.
Look,
that these women are liars.
Yeah.
Vice President Biden on NBC's Meet the Press said the boastful Donald Trump he saw on an old video was all the evidence he needed to make up his mind.
This guy, as I said, has acknowledged that he has been a sexual predator. He's acknowledged that he's abused his power. And as I said, the textbook definition of what constitutes sexual assault.
CBS's Major Garrett tells us Trump's core support is rock solid, but that may not be enough to win the election.
Voters who we talk to tell us, I'm with Trump no matter what. But he doesn't have that fierce loyalty and a broad enough coalition across the country and in key battleground states to narrow the gap in the polls.
President Obama is expected to use another campaign appearance in Ohio about an hour from now to call out Republicans for making Trump their nominee and sticking with him. Speaking in an interview for today's Ellen DeGeneres show, Hillary Clinton said she was uncomfortable sharing the debate stage with Trump last Sunday night.
He was really all wrought up, and you could just sense how much anger he had. And so he was really trying to dominate and then literally stalk me around the stage.
Former CIA Director Michael Hayden believes Russian hackers acting at the behest of Vladimir Putin were behind the theft of Clinton campaign emails. The aim, he says, was to sow seeds of doubt.
It is to erode confidence in our political processes. It's to mess with our heads. It's to do to us what he thinks we do to him.
On the Weather Watch, North Carolina Governor Pat McCrory is scheduled to take another aerial tour of areas swamped by flooding from Hurricane Matthew. Today he visits Tarboro, about 60 miles east of Raleigh. Forecasters say the West Coast could be hit by a major storm over the weekend, with as much as 10 inches of rain falling in some areas. The government says retail sales posted a solid gain in September. Economist Gus Fauché.
We had broad-based growth across most categories in retail, and that's an indication that consumers are in good shape and are feeling comfortable about the way things are going.
The Richard Nixon Presidential Library in Yorba Linda, California, fresh from a $15 million makeover, opens to the public today. Nixon grandson Christopher Cox says one and all are welcome.
You can actually come in and walk around the entire office and sit in the couches and even sit behind the desk at the president's chair so you can see what it's like, what it feels like to be president of the United States.
The averages are higher across the board in early trading on Wall Street. The Dow Industrial Average is up 121 points. This is CBS News.
I'm Nick Soboleski, a Select Quote agent with a true story that could save you hundreds of dollars a year. A woman named Linda just called. Her husband, Ray, has a $300,000 group life insurance policy, but is changing jobs and can't take it with him. Well, I impartially shopped the highly rated term life insurance companies we represent and found Ray, who is 41 and takes medication to control his cholesterol, a 10-year, $500,000 policy for under $26 a month. That's almost twice the coverage for less than half of what he had paid. If SelectQuote hasn't shopped for your life insurance, you're probably paying too much.
For your free quote, call 1-800-457-1337. That's 1-800-457-1337. 1-800-457-1337. Or go to SelectQuote.com. We shop, you save. Get full details on the example policy at SelectQuote.com/commercials. Your price can vary depending on your health, issuing company, and other factors not available in all states.
The remains of a teenage sailor who was killed at Pearl Harbor but wasn't identified until earlier this year will be laid to rest today in Ohio. Reporter Greg Saber has the story.
Joanne Janis, a niece of Seaman Second Class Rudolph Piskurian, met the plane carrying his remains at Cleveland Hopkins International Airport.
I feel so proud of my uncle and so proud of my country.
Rudolph Piskurian, killed at Pearl Harbor nearly 75 years ago, identified through DNA analysis, will be buried today in his hometown of Elyria, Ohio, with full military honors. Greg Saber for CBS News, Cleveland.
Cable TV host Nancy Grace, frequently caricatured for her tough prosecutor's take on true crime stories, has ended a 12-year run on HLN. The one-time Atlanta special prosecutor got her start on court TV before sliding over to HLN.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world. You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Expect some passing clouds, but still dry and warm out there. High temperatures of around 80 tonight. few more clouds, overnight lows much milder, 60 to 62. Check out JCPenney and get an extra 20% off select items with your JCPenney credit card and coupon, or 15% with any other form of payment. That's getting your pennies worth at JCPenney. And I'm Sorgene 12's Chief Meteorologist Patrick Orr. On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
Martin Truex Jr. is off the pace and he is headed to the pit lane. Elliott Powers around the outside. Michael McDowell pops the right front tire. Here's Martin Truex to the bottom. Blaney blocks him off too. Meanwhile, Chase Elliott went 4 wide on the back straightaway. They're side by side for the lead.
Hear it live on Chattanooga's official NASCAR radio station.
Hot News Talk 1240, the voice of NASCAR.
Live from Chattanooga, Tennessee, it's David Tulis.
On Monday, a valuable and important benefit that we are wanting you to know about, and that is a free screening of the movie Vaxxed. It's Monday evening at 5:15 at Nutrition World off of Lee Highway. That event is sponsored by the Tennessee Coalition for Vaccine Choice. And Monday is kind of a big day here in Chattanooga on this point of the liberty of the family and the protection of children. If you care about your children and want to protect them, the thing is to do is the not obvious thing, and that is not to go and get your vaccines as you're supposed to, as the good people would demand, but to say no and to be cautious, conservative, and caring. And that would be to avoid more or less all, I would suggest, of the vaccines. So Monday at Nutrition World, things are happening. There's a 2 to 4 p.m. meet and greet with the team of the movie Vaxxed. And that will be with Polly Tommy. She's she's a producer of this movie, a very fine film that was screened here in Chattanooga a couple of months ago. Very terrifying and scary and enlightening production featuring Dr. Andrew Wakefield of Great Britain. The free screening is at 5:15 again at Nutrition World, and that will be followed by a Q&A and other stories of those who want information about this. Polly Tommy will be here filming vaccine injury stories. So if you, my listener, have knowledge of a vaccine injured person or family, make sure that party comes to Nutrition World. That is Nutrition World off Lee Highway near the Lee and 153 intersection, and make a statement to Polly Tommy, again, a producer of the movie Vaxxed, a very controversial movie that caused an uproar at the Sundance Film Festival. It was banned and blockaded, but it has terrifying truths in it. And I have here in the studio at the Hot News Talk Radio studio 5 moms who are talking with us about this danger to you of mercury and thimerosal in many of these vaccines. Terrifying, I would say, very, very bad ingredients intended for a public good, right? A public good, but not necessarily an individual and private good. Public health does not have you, my listener, view, nor your children individually. It has only the mass in view. And so it discounts the damage that is caused by vaccines. In fact, there's a law that was passed in 1986, the Child National Vaccine Injury Act, which absolves vaccine makers of liability, and the liability for vaccine damage in the billions of dollars in the past few years paid for by the taxpayer. And so we would like there to be eventually liability attached back on the producers of these vaccines. I have here on the mic Amy Miller. She has a 6-year-old child, a girl not vaccinated, and Amy and the other moms here in the studio are desirous of liberty, and Amy and her family were denied the girl's entrance to a preschool. Now, Amy, tell us about exemptions, the medical and religious exemptions for vaccinations when my listener and his family are dealing with a publicly regulated entity such as a school or daycare center.
Sure. The Tennessee, right on the Tennessee Health page on the internet, you can find the descriptions for immunization requirements. And it does not matter if you are public or private, government funded or not. It does not matter. The legality of it is the same across the board, according to our attorney that we hired as a family. I'm not an attorney. This is just my experience. But I'm going to read a couple things from the children with medical or religious exemption requirements. A medical exemption focuses on physicians. It must be a DO or an MD that has to sign the medical exemption for each immunization. In the state of Tennessee, you do not have to explain what the reason is that you are being exempt from. Now, religious exemptions, this is something that requires a statement, just a statement. One statement is good by the parent or guardian, and it states that the vaccination conflicts with their religious tenets or beliefs. Nothing more, nothing less outside of that statement. It has to be notarized, and it needs to be signed. Men, I'm telling you right now, please sign this with your wife.
So in other words, there doesn't have to be content, a religious explanation of how this view connects with the New Testament or the teaching of St. Paul.
No, in other states, they have different requirements, but in the state of Tennessee, you just have to have one written statement that is signed and notarized by one parent. I'm telling you, if you will sign it, your wife will sign it, it makes an impact.
This is David Tulis, and caller, you're live on the air at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. What's on your mind? We're talking here with Amy Miller. Amy, so when I filled out these religious exemption statements in the past, I was doing something needless. I said, well, I'm a Christian, and under the sixth commandment, which says thou shalt not murder, I have a converse obligation to look out for the health and safety of my family. And if I allow a vaccine for my children when they were going to UTC, then I'm violating a tenet of my faith, which is the commandment. That was unnecessary, you're saying, Amy Miller.
It is unnecessary, but necessary. And let me explain that. It's unnecessary in the state of Tennessee to submit that. I worked with our attorney, Alan Phillips, and you can see his information at vaccinerights.com. And he walked through what would be a legal vaccine exemption no matter where I moved. So in the state of New York, let's say it, for example, they will actually ask you what your beliefs are and can question you. In the state of Tennessee, anybody can ask you a question. There's a lot of rumors going around that they cannot ask you that question of what your religious beliefs are. However, they can ask the question. You do not have to answer that. And that's where it goes back to, what is my religious belief? And that is one thing that I can actually hold up an example. I have my religious statement. And my religious statement is spelled out the reasons why we do not vaccinate our child and how we came to the belief of that. And I will tell you that it's important. You need to know the reason why. Don't just fluff it and write a statement.
I would like to have Melanie McDonald come to the mic just for a second. What were you wanting to say?
Well, a lot of
Melanie.
people will say, do I need to sign this form? Because I've already signed a form at my pediatrician's office and they've put it in my file. Let me just tell you about that form that you signed. You may want to actually go read it, because the last few times I've been to the pediatrician, they will hand me a pre-printed form from the AAP that says, I have received the information on these vaccines, on the safety and effectiveness and the risk from my pediatrician. They've gone over this totally. And then I realized by declining these vaccinations, I am endangering my child and endangering the lives of the children that they may come in contact with. As far as I know, child endangerment is against the law. So I don't sign those forms. If you want to sign a form, you need to sign a form that simply says, pursuant to state code, whatever, I am declining the vaccinations. And that's it. You don't need to admit that you are endangering your child and that you have received all the information, because they usually don't come out with the 3-page CDC, the insert from the vaccine. They hand you a colorful little sheet of paper that says, yes, there might be some injection site redness or a little fever, but in the 6 minutes that your doctor's in there in the room with you, they don't go over the full risk or benefits of the vaccine. So be careful what you sign.
No, I think that's a very good point. Always read government documents. Often government documents force you to make legal concessions and legal admissions that are in fact are not true, about which you don't even know. So like on tax forms, you sign a tax return, you're making all kinds of concessions, legal admissions about your status before the law. And here with the vaccine question, you are making admissions. And I think Melanie is right that you don't want to sign a form that saying where you realize and you admit that it might be damaging to your children's health to not fill this out. In fact, that's not an admission you can make. You feel that having the vaccine is a potentially damaging intrusion into your children's health. We have here on the mic again Amy Miller, who's a mother of a 6-year-old girl. This is David Tulis. Thanks for giving us a minute of your time. Her daughter is not vaccinated, and the Millers were denied entrance to a preschool based on their convictions. So, Amy, fill us in further, please, on the exemption problem.
Sure. There is a form that does go around that has Governor Bill Haslam's name on it. It's a model form. And I just want to clarify this too. I'm not telling you not to sign it. I guess I don't have the authority to say that either, but I will say, look at the law, know the law, and do what the law says. And the law requires a statement. If you have a religious exemption, it requires a statement. And I just talked about that. It's a 1-sentence statement that just declares that your religious beliefs go against vaccinations. And sign it, date it, and you're done. And have that in their file and make sure you carry it with you. Carry it with you in your glove compartment. Carry it with you, moms, in the purse. Husbands, just know that that statement is written and that is yours. Have it notarized. Don't forget to have it notarized. Another question that comes up every day are the certificate of immunization. This is one of the questions that I answer quite often. Your religious exemption statement allows you to have that religious exemption. You are not asking the school to get authority for it. You are not asking anyone else. You are writing an exemption. Once you write that exemption, if your school requires a physical, some do, some do not. I believe Hamilton County Public Schools do require a physical. That means that you need a certificate of immunization. And that is separate from your religious exemption statement. If you have the certificate of immunization, your doctor needs to sign it, and they need to check a little box in section 1A, and it simply says religious exemption. And that explains why your certificate of immunization form is not filled out. It's because you have it can be a religious or medical exemption, but they'll write in the rest of it for the medical. But I'm specifically talking about religious exemption right now. And there's 2 requirements for a religious exemption. I should say, sort of said a while ago. It's a sincere belief in a religion. A religion, in what we tend to think is a religion, is not necessarily the legal definition. There have been all types of religions that have received exemptions, including atheists. So remember, we're not convincing people to follow our religion, but it's following the law. And that's what's really important.
Right. The legal definition from a very important case on exemptions that came out during the Vietnam War on religious conscientious objections to warfare said that the government can't pry into the content of the religious belief, but for it to be religious, it has to have certain parameters, namely the belief in a higher being or a source of law authority to which the swearer binds himself and is under obligation and duty to obey. And that essentially is religion when there's a recognition of a higher non-human authority or power or law system to which you obey. I'd like to talk. Is there anything else you wanted to mention, Amy, that you were going to get to?
Yes, I just want to mention a really good source is a lot of people, are nervous of the legal fees and different things. And one thing to start out with, and I can show the viewers, the vaccine legal exemptions. It is a ebook written by Alan Phillips, and I have it printed out. I purchased it myself. It's for our family use, and he goes through everything from religious exemptions, medical exemptions, the federal law, understanding what you're doing. Understand what you're doing is such a key component of this. Don't just write it to write it. Understand why you're doing it. But anything from college to military to divorce to all the questions that you have, start with that. It's $25. VaccineRights.com. Also, Tennessee Coalition for Vaccine Choice will help you get the information that you need. Again, we're not anti-vaccine. We are helping you make informed choices and understanding what informed consent means and why you should have it.
The Tennessee Coalition for Vaccine Choice is sponsoring on Monday an important series of events in the afternoon. At 2, there's a meet and greet with the people who've made the film Vaxxed, which was shown here in Chattanooga 2 times, an absolutely full house downtown. And at 5:15 on Monday, there's a free screening of this movie. It goes till 6:45. And after that, there's a Q&A. And there's an interest on the part of the Vaxxed crew to film your story. So if you, my listener, are a member of a vaccine-injured family or the head of a vaccine-injured family, or you know people who are, have them come to Nutrition World. It's at Nutrition World on Lee Highway, right near the intersection of 153, the overpass there. Again, Tennessee Coalition for Vaccine Choice is sponsoring this event at Nutrition World. That's Monday. The Vaxxed movie will be here. Polly, Tommy, the producer, will be here, and she's wanting to take statements, video statements of your situation. So please don't let this occasion go by. You need to be connected with people who are concerned about this issue, as I am. My name is David Tulis, and we're here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. Kathy McGill lives in Ottawa. She has 2 children, 21 and 25. Her husband's a retired office manager at Champion Window. And her daughter is Sarah Dunn, recently married, age 25, injured in a vaccine encounter. Is that right, Kathy?
Yes, David. Thank you for letting me be here. As I start out, I just want to share with your listeners, I want you to think about, as I tell my story, I want you to think about your daughter, your granddaughter, your niece.
We have a call. Caller, this is David Tulis. You're live on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. What's on your mind?
I'm going to disagree with your guess. If the law can require an exemption or allows an exemption, it could not allow an exemption. There's no law that can compel you to do anything. Laws act on the damage. So I'm going to go back to my original point. I don't care whether a lawyer said it or not, because lawyers are often wrong. Any law that would compel anyone to do anything is unconstitutional on its face, number one. Number two, you get the doctor to sign a piece of paper saying that this injection will cause no harm. He won't do it. Let him sign the paper, not you. And if you want to sign the paper, after he signs that, say, doctor refused to guarantee the safety of this drug. And because of that, I am refusing to give it to my child. Put it on them, not him. I wouldn't even do that. Say, listen, where's your authority?
Right. Where
in America can a law require you to do anything?
All right. Well, that's a point we can discuss in detail later. But the point is that they can't force you even to fill out these forms. So there's an argument there. Thank you, Mike, for calling. Kathy McGill, I'm sorry, we wanted to catch that call. Your daughter, Sarah Dunn, 25 years old. She had in 2011 a first shot for HPV, the human papilloma virus or vaccine that intends to reduce cervical cancer for women thought to be or likely to be or seen to be sexually active at some point. Now being proposed for boys and girls, both boys and girls, age 12 and under. Go ahead. What happened?
Well, what happened when my daughter was 20, she was going to her appointment, and I had known about the HPV vaccine. I had not let her have it up to that point, and even when she went to that visit, I was like, whatever you do, don't let them give you the HPV vaccine. I haven't done enough research about it. It's still too new. And I have a very good relationship with the doctor, personally, professionally. So when she was in the office, they called me on the phone, and he and I talked a minute, and he's like, Mom, just you be the mom, let me be the doctor. And, everything, the vaccine that's come out, everything is fine. I went completely against every intuition that I had. I was so strong about, her not taking this vaccine. I went against every intuition. And she got the first shot. Now, with this HPV vaccine, you have to get a series of 3 shots. You have the first one. In 2 months, you have the second one. In 6 months, you have the third one. Once she started this vaccine, especially after the second one, I'll kind of skip ahead to the second one.
she started having she would wake up in the middle of the night. She couldn't breathe. She felt like there was concrete on her chest. We would go to the emergency room. She started having every joint swell, like her little toe would swell. It would turn blood red. Then it would be her big toe. Then it would be her fingers. It would be her ear. It would be her joints hurt. She went through so many things. And every time we would go to the doctor, we would go to the emergency room, and I would ask them, and I would say, she's had this vaccination. Is this side effects from the vaccination? And there was no conversation. We had no conversation at all about this possibly being side effects from this vaccination. Then we were sent to a rheumatologist because they said, well, maybe she has this rare rheumatology disease that gets diagnosed at her age. And we went to the rheumatologist. I said to the rheumatologist, she's had her second shot. Is this side effects from this vaccination? And again, there was no conversation with the medical field about the vaccination and what was going on with my daughter, along with her heart racing, not being able to breathe, things just sporadically swelling and reddening on her body. She had hair loss during the same time. And I would not allow her to take the third vaccine. And to this day, I still know in my heart that if she would have taken that third vaccine, she would have had physical issues that would be long lasting. Still, for her age at 25, she's very fatigued, more than what I feel like she should be for her age. So I just want to share with the listeners, talk to, if you're a grandfather, if you're a father, if you're an uncle. Now this shot is being given, this vaccine is being given 12-year-old. It starts at 12 years old for girls and boys both.
You're hearing Kathy McGill from Ottawa with two children telling about her daughter, Sarah. And I have a moment here. I'd like to get Danielle Seymour Phillips in. Danielle, you're wanting to say something about what Kathy McGill of Ottawa is saying.
Yes, I wanted to speak about going to the pediatrician, specifically in Chattanooga, our experience. When you go to the pediatrician, they will sometimes bully you, which was my experience with my daughter. Even though my sister had passed away from having a vaccine, we were bullied and actually kicked out of a pediatrician office for not wanting to vaccinate our child. And I just want to say to the mothers and fathers out there, stand up. This is your child, not their child. You have to protect your child. The medical industry is not going to protect your child. You have to do this from the time they are in your belly to the time they are born at the hospital, when they are born, when they're trying to give them Hep B vaccine, which is a vaccine against a sexually transmitted disease, or you can get it from needles. We are not a one size fits all. Your child is not a one size fits all. And I would also just like to say that, in any law having to do with your health, that it's all based on liability. And you have got to learn, you've got to do your research, because your child, who cares about their liability? You care about your child. So make decisions based on the safety of your child.
Thank you, Danielle Seymour Phillips, and the other women in this studio here. This is David Tulis. On Monday, the Tennessee Coalition for Vaccine Choice is sponsoring a terrific event. Don't miss out on this, especially if you have a story of vaccine injury in your family, especially a meeting of the Vax movie crew. They're taking video statements from 2 to 4 p.m. at Nutrition World off Lee Highway. There's a free screening of the movie in the Nutrition World auditorium. I think there's a capacity of 100. I'll Q&A after that, but make sure that people who are damaged can make this statement. This is David Tulis and Amy Miller, Kathy McGill, Rhonda Osman, Danielle Seymour Phillips, and Melanie McDonald. Thank you for joining us.
I just want to say that
we can't get that in. We'll we'll check with you later. Thanks. I've got some messages for you. Hang on.
Give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds. We'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Here's what advertisers are saying about AM 1240. HotNewsTalkRadio.com.
Radio station, they really care. They're always calling me probably once a week, checking on me, seeing how things going, see if they want to change any of the ads or do anything different, seeing what my needs are. Gotten business off the ads that you do for me, and seems to be working well at this point.
Prices were very fair. Areas in this town that we aren't able to get other ways, your radio station is able to help us out, and I really appreciate that.
We've been very pleased with the services we've got. It seems like everybody over there cares about what they're going to do, how it's going to work for us on this end. And we've been very impressed with the creativity of the ads that we've heard. And they always seem to be right on point, even without us having to come up with what's going to be said.
I've been doing business with News Talk Radio for quite some time. It's the best place and the best value you can get for your advertisement. The commercials are great. They're very professional. I was actually blown away.
The commercial that they put together was awesome. It was way far above all the other radio stations we've dealt with. The best we've had yet, guaranteed, by far.
AM 1240, HotNewsTalkRadio.com gets results. Let us get results for your business. For no obligation free consultation, call General Sales Manager Steve Johnson. Call 423-240-5459. That's 240-5459. Or you can always email Steve at NoogaRadioSteve@gmail.com. That's NoogaRadioSteve@gmail.com. AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio. We get results.
We're at the Cantina at Amigos Mexican Restaurant. Yes, sir. 2 orders of nachos with beef and beans, 2 beers. Chattanooga loves its Amigos restaurants, but the Amigos in Hickson has something extra. NASCAR, every race. How about a house wine? Really good. Big name beers, just tell Maria what you want. And here at Amigos, margaritas are popular, and it's only $3 all day. If you come here on a race day, Sunday, a Natty Light is only $2.25. Here at Amigos, just during NASCAR, Natty Light, $2.25. Amigos Mexican Restaurant in Hickson. The happy hour is 3 to 9 today and every day. I'd say the atmosphere is festive. Look at that huge TV. It's like being amid the fans under a bright sun, but no gasoline fumes, no heat. Stay cool. Quench your thirst. Amigos between Staples and Hobby Lobby. Take the next table to mine. Enjoy the NASCAR race with friend or family here at the Cantina at Amigos Mexican Restaurant. Okay, it's started.
Drivers, start your engines.
You used to call me on my cell phone.
When you crack your screen, mess up your charge port, you get soaked in a rainstorm, what do? Save money, save big, fix it, get surgery. There's a cell phone hospital near you. It's the Cell Surgeon. Adam Disbro, the man in white, he replaces your screen, fixes your buttons, gives you back Twitter, Facebook, your online universe. Walk-in patients go to Cell Surgeon in Ottawa. Cell Surgeon is new in Ottawa, next to Zaxby's. Other docs in the cell repair business are just lab coats. The doc at Cell Surgeon is the best. He wants you to be happy, fix your phone, save money, and save time. Every minute is valuable, and Cell Surgeon doesn't want to waste a second. Your wireless MD, the Cell Surgeon, quick and precise with your device. Takes an hour or less. Northgate Mall, Cell Surgeon next to Old Chicago Pizza, 900-8263, thecellsurgeon.com. Like him on Facebook.
You used to call me on my... You used to.
I'm blowing everything up. We're starting over. I'm doing a new show. I want guys who push it to the middle of the table and go over the top. Take a risk, fail miserably. I'm right, and I'm not wrong, and I'll never back down. Conflict works. Allow it.
It's The Herd with Colin Cowherd. Right here and everywhere. Noon Eastern.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio with your Hot News Now update. A home invasion is something that most gun owners train for, but never expect to actually happen to them. But when Charles Sledge from Sunrise Drive heard a noise inside of his house, he pulled a gun and went in. Ryan Megan Francis was sitting at his kitchen table, according to his testimony. Mr. Sledge held a gun on her until police arrived. The woman said that she thought the house was abandoned, and she said she had been chased into it by another woman. She's now in jail, charged with aggravated burglary. Trouble at the Cancun's on Market Street when a man apparently a gas pump but began beating it with a tire iron. He beat several others as well, according to the manager of that store. He then picked up a gas canister,
poured gasoline in front of a dumpster, lit it on fire, and sped away in his Jeep. He's been arrested and charged with setting fire to personal property and vandalism. 35-year-old Thomas Williams was sitting in his parked car when he was shot in the face by an unknown assailant. He apparently drove himself to a nearby fire station where he was then taken to a hospital by EMS. Police are still trying to find 2 suspects on the loose. It was going on in the Tennessee Valley. It's going on Hot 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
Expect some passing clouds, but still dry and warm out there. High temperatures of around 80 tonight. A few more clouds, overnight lows much milder, 60 to 62. Check out JCPenney and get an extra 20% off select items with your JCPenney credit card and coupon, or 15% with any other form of payment. That's getting your pennies worth at JCPenney. And I'm Sorgene 12 Chief Meteorologist Matt Tricore on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
This is David Tulis, AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, the station for the man who matters, and we are glad that you're able to give us a couple of minutes of your time. Wanted to mention there's a golf tournament on the 1st of November, a Tuesday, at Windstone Golf Course in Ottawa, and it is to benefit the Tennessee Baptist Children's Home. It's a 501c3 corporation that does not take Yankee money. And there's an 11 a.m. Lunch and a tee off at noon at Windstone. Call the number that I'm going to tell you and take part in it. Write a nice big check. You, my listener, are the man who matters. You are a man of means. This is a worthy local project. Write that check. Call. Maybe you can enter some of the people in your office who are golfers. Just pay their way and let them golf, and you are doing a good deed. 892-2722. That's 892-2722. The Tennessee Baptist Children's Home. Make sure you at least consider having a part in that and helping flourish the free market sector. There's a deadline today. I want to mention it about making comments on a new rule, and the rule is coming out of the CDC, and it is aimed at travelers, and it is a police state rule on the government being enabled by this administrative system to seize travelers on the slightest pretext and essentially to imprison them. And you can through today. I'm not sure what the deadline is on the time. You can enter a comment, go to Nooganomics.com and find out where to go on the CDC web page. It's a rulemaking proposal, and please take part in that. Send a comment in about the liberty of travelers to be free from kidnapping by the state. Kidnapping by the state is a grave problem, and we have working in our interest an attorney in Nashville, Connie Reguli. She's a longtime barrister fighting for families and a former prosecutor, and she's going to talk with us about the child abuse industry, if you will, that makes a traffic in children. And Connie, thanks for joining us here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. You are looking for people like my listener who may want to take part in a medical kidnap or state kidnapping case in class action. Tell us sketch out the landscape for us and why things seem to be ripe to you as an attorney for a class action to block the state from routinely kidnapping members of families.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Dave, for having me on this morning. And, I was able to listen to your prior guest this morning about the vaccines. And, the perfect segue into what I have to talk about today is the fact that, the whole vaccine industry is pretty much cash for kids. They're capitalizing on our children and making our children a commodity. And this goes right into taking children out of homes. And, everybody, when I first say it, people go, oh my gosh, we have to get children who are being abused or neglected out of homes and keep them safe. And I absolutely agree with that. And I've been an attorney for over 20 years. And the very first jury trial I ever had was a baby who had been abused. And I prosecuted somebody for abuse. But what has happened is the child welfare industry has burgeoned into this complex system in which the profit is on the head of the child. And it really started, it's been a social experiment that's been going on for the last 40 years. starting in 1974 with CAPTA, which was the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act, the Mondale Act, it was also called, and that started the flow of money from the federal government to the state governments for these child welfare agencies. And then you take and you layer upon that, layer after layer after layer of federal legislation. You come up to 1997. This is a critical year. And, you know, it was Bill Clinton's Adoption and Safe Families Act. And I know Hillary's going around bragging about it now, saying, you know, she helped get these children out of foster care into adoptive homes. But here's what it did. It put a price tag on the head of every child. It started out with a $4,000 bonus to the state if they would adopt a child out to strangers, and now it's up to $10,000 to $12,000 for every single child. And not only do they give the states bonus money for adopting children out, the adoptive parents are receiving a stipend to keep the child until the child turns 18. And what is so sad about this is so critical that the listeners understand is children are being removed from homes for poverty. So you have a family that's lost their job and they can't get an apartment, or they're transitioning, and maybe they even have to just stay in a hotel. The state agencies, including the state of Tennessee, which does this, is they can take a child, remove a child from the parents for being homeless. And living in a hotel and not having a permanent residence can be considered homeless. So what is happening is this Title IV money coming from the federal government and flowing into the states is an unlimited source of income. However, it is directly tied, and people need to understand, directly tied to the number of children that they place in foster care. In the state of Tennessee, on an average, every single day, 22 children are removed from their family home and put in the foster care system. This country has, on any given day, 400,000 children who are placed in the homes of strangers. So what is happening, and where the trend has gone, is that the states are now so desperate to receive this money, including the state of Tennessee, that they must put children in foster care to balance their budget. Because the state budget is about 42% federal money. So you can start to see why this creates a dangerous trend, right?
I think my listener understands this pretty well, Connie Reguli. All right, so class action. What is involved in creating a class action? What is the cause? What are the requirements for you as the attorney trying to assemble this group of Tennessee residents who are victims of state kidnapping?
All right, so what the trend is that now we have social workers who are just basically snatching children. So whether, the federal standard set by the United States Supreme Court is that there must be exigent circumstances, there must be an immediate threat of harm for a child to be removed from a home without a hearing. And so they are removing children from homes without hearings. Now, and worse than that is sometimes they are even lying or are filing false court documents to remove children. Families have a 14th Amendment right to familial association. We had in the early 90s, we had a class action suit which was for foster children, and that lawsuit was to get children out of foster care and place them basically in adoptive homes. Now what we need to do is we need to take our class action back to the children and the families. Now is the time for children who've been wrongfully removed, who have a 14th Amendment right to familial association and a 4th Amendment right against unlawful seizure, for those families to rise up in behalf of their children and for the parents in behalf of their familial rights to get a class action declaratory judgment and bring the hammer back down on the state agency. So if you know people, and they are all over this state, if your listeners know people, if they know people who can, who've had their children wrongfully removed, and sometimes it's even for vaccines. There have been parents who've had their children removed for failure to give vaccines, and it's considered medical neglect. So if you know people who've had their children removed, even if it's just for a few days or for a few weeks, and they feel like it was wrong, that it was for poverty or because of not getting vaccines or for being alleged of medical some type of medical neglect, that they were maybe trying to get a second opinion. I mean, people across this country heard about the Justine Pelletier case on the East Coast last year, where her parents just wanted to seek a second opinion, and she was taken by the state agency. That has happened as well here in Tennessee, and that's what I want. That's what I want them to understand. That's what I want you, the listeners, to understand, is it's time for us to act out, and I'm willing to do that in behalf of the citizens of the state of Tennessee.
Now, the listener is busy hauling a load of freight right now, and he's listening to us on his TuneIn Radio app. And actually, he lives here, but he's in Oklahoma right now. He's listening to my show. Don't have time to write the number down for Connie Reguli, but look up Connie Reguli, Reguli, Nashville attorney. That's all you need to know. You can Google her that way and find her and contact her by email or calling her office. This is David Tulis, and we're at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, and we're the station for The Man Who Matters, and I'm the editor of the website for The Man Who Matters. That's Nooganomics.com. Today is just, by the way, the last day to enter an objection at the CDC, which is proposing new regulations for quarantine that are draconian, to say the least. You can enter a negative comment if you don't want that sort of impingement on the right to travel for people who may have a little bit of a fever, can be effectively kidnapped by the state, by authorities, and kept in quarantine, even though they're not sick. They have nothing wrong with them. So today is the last day to enter an objection if you can. And go to Nooganomics.com. It's the second story back at that website for The Man Who Matters. Connie Reguli, you're telling us about potential litigation that you'd like to lead, and we encourage the listener to call you and find out more about that. The listener also has a question about the officer and the social worker at the door. An allegation has been made unbeknownst to my listener's wife, who's at home right now with the children. And what does my listener need to tell her about how to respond to the state actors there at the door demanding to get in? What should that mom say, since she's there by herself?
Wow, that's a great question. And let me tell you, in today's world where everybody has a cell phone with a video or an audio recorder on it, number one thing, and I post it all the time through our social media, is I hold up some type of recording device. The number one thing is to turn on your video camera on your telephone. And then at the door, you ask them if they have a search warrant, or if they have some type of warrant or court order that would allow them entry into your home. And, and if they don't, you need to ask them to, that they need to go get that. Now, let me tell you, though, here is the problem, and this is very scary. The problem is that right now, the status of our juvenile court system and this child welfare system is that judges will write orders for removal of children based upon the one-sided affidavit of a social worker, which is based upon anonymous information provided through a hotline call. So if somebody calls in, it could be real, or it could be, your 15th cousin, distant cousin who's mad because you didn't sell them, that junker car you have in your yard. They could call in and they could say, this child, anonymously, and say this child is being abused. The last time I saw them, they were covered with bruises. They're not being fed. They're starved. And that, if they raise it to that high of a level, it's going to be considered a priority one, or something in which the child's at immediate threat of harm. The social worker, without vetting the caller at all. Now, there's several issues within the system that I'm trying to confront, but one of them is the fact that these callers are not vetted at all. So even if you call and make a police report and you say, my neighbor stole my car, you have to give your name, and they have to somehow vet out whether or not that's a valid claim. But they do not vet these anonymous callers. But they can take that information provided by an anonymous caller without vetting it, without documenting it, without doing any investigation, and go to a judge and get an emergency order to take your child out of your home. So number one is record. Tell them that you want to see a copy of any warrant. Now, here's another problem. So many of our laws are at issue, and one of the other issues is that under our laws currently, parents must cooperate with an investigation. Now, what that investigation entails sort of varies, and it's different in the eyes of different judges, but sometimes judges just sign an order that says that the parents are to comply with the investigation, which to these social workers, what that means is that they can enter your home and talk to your child and examine your child. So number one is tell them that you want a warrant or some type of a search warrant or order, and you want to have that available for inspection.
Is that the same as saying, get off my porch and go away? Or what happens
Yeah,
then?
pretty much. Yes,
what
it is.
What does
Tell
the
them
mom
that you are
expect?
protecting your home. You have, Fourth Amendment rights against search and seizure. Now, I will tell you, since you've taken it to the Fourth Amendment position, here in our district, our federal district, which includes Tennessee, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, Kentucky, we have very bad Fourth Amendment protections because of our circuit court out of Cincinnati. Basically, if an officer comes to your door and knocks on the door, you open the door and you do so much as take a step back, it can be considered an invitation into your home. So there's a case out of Cincinnati, that's our district, where basically some guy did that, and they said it was consent to enter the home when he stepped back out of their way. So people must be affirmative in the protection of their rights against Fourth Amendment unlawful entry into their home.
So if the answer of the listener's wife is no, then it cannot be with a step back. It has to be negative. It has to be an assertion of her and that family's rights to be free from an unwarranted search. And without a sworn statement and a judge's order, there is no warrant to enter. And so the answer needs to be no, please depart from this property, and the door is shut. Is that the scenario?
And let me tell you what I've seen. This is serious business. Let me tell you what I've seen. I've seen officers put their foot in the door. So, and I've heard people say, please take your foot out of the door. Please take your foot out of the door. I mean, I've got recordings of that happening. I mean, that's the recorder. They need it turned on. They need it going. They need to say, please take your foot out of the door. And they need to be affirmative. And I'll tell you, I've tried a Fourth Amendment unlawful entry, and unfortunately, it was before all of our modern technology, and it happened back in 2007. And by the time I got to the jury trial on it, and I did have a jury trial, but by the time I got there, all of the government people lied, and so I wasn't able to prevail. I didn't have anything except the testimony of the homeowners and the testimony of the law enforcement and the child welfare workers. But basically that was the defense that they made, was that the father, who happened to be outside when they pulled up in the evening, told them to wait outside, and then he turned and walked in the door. And they say when he turned and walked in the door, they believed it was an invitation for them to follow. So, and based on that alone, we lost that case. So, and it's a published case, at least the circuit court thing that says that the Fourth Amendment applies to social workers. It's called Andrews v. Hickman County. People can Google that and look that up. It's pretty easy to remember. And it talks about how even social workers have to abide by the Fourth Amendment. So our Fourth Amendment protections, people must be affirmative about it.
So this is David Tulis. We're at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, talking with Connie Reguli, a Nashville attorney. She is soliciting parties to join in a class action. And again, Connie, tell the listener who's just joining us in a minute here what the purpose is of this class action. What are you trying to accomplish?
So the purpose of this class action is to restore family integrity. Both children and parents have a 14th Amendment right to familial integrity. That's already been determined by the United States Supreme Court. And children have a right, a Fourth Amendment right against unlawful seizure. And this has not really been challenged either in Tennessee or throughout the country. There is a case out of California where this has been argued, and they're finally getting some success. They've been fighting it though for 10 years, but it's getting ripe. And a child has a Fourth Amendment right against being unlawfully seized. I mean, just think about it. I mean, we've gotten our heads so twisted around the child welfare system, but if somebody walked in your home and just took you and put you in a car and drove away with you, it would be an unlawful seizure. And so we now must take this for the protection of the children and for family integrity to bring a class action of children who are either wrongfully removed, who are removed from homes without exigent circumstances, who are unlawfully retained past the point of where there is any real threat of danger or harm. And we must create a class action so that we can get a monitoring system put on top of the Child Welfare Agency, because they have absolutely no incentive. All their money is incentivized by foster care. And I cannot get, once kids get in foster care, I cannot get kids out of foster care after meeting after meeting after meeting after court appearance and court appearance because of the financial incentives to the state that are involved.
Connie Reguli, thank you so much for joining me here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
Thank you so much.
Connie Reguli is an attorney in Nashville. She's working on a class action to prevent further gains of the child abuse industry, which is a state industry. Child abuse industry is with other profiteers, corporate profiteers, a vast enterprise, a combination marshaling itself against the family, against the safety and security of children. And it is a process. It's often guised under medical kidnapping, child safety kidnapping. And she's telling us that the state is paid at least $12,000 per kidnapped child that goes into foster care, and the families who receive these children, all with good intentions, no doubt, with Christian charity and mercy, are also paid a stipend. So there's a whole aggregate, including churches, including Christian nonprofit ministries, that are part of the child abduction industry, which is state-run. It is a state industry that got launched under the Mondale Act, the CAPTA Act, a social experiment run amok. This is David Tulis, and we here at AM 1240, we care about local economy and free markets. We care about you. I'm here for you every day, 9 to 11. If you have a friend, make him the second listener of our show. There's you, and then there's him. So together, you two guys, men who matter here in Chattanooga, you two can have a great effect among your friends, among your colleagues, people at your club, people in your factory, maybe if you're a Christian, people at your church. This is David Tulis. Do tune in every weekday at 9. Tell a friend about our great program at the local economy and free market station, Hot News Talk Radio, Nooga Radio.
Over? Did you say over? Nothing is over until we decide it is. Was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor? No.
German?